صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Before I actually enter, I just want to do what we do best, which is Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn. Imam Hussein alayhi salam signed history with his blood, so me and you can maintain the road. How do you have the ability to actually put your stamp in history? And history takes a different course because of your ability to stamp it eternally. Then how do you have a son that comes behind you? Because you have to raise that son. Now you're going to see the son of the gate. So how do we raise sons? How do we raise daughters in this trying time of social media, technology, inability to connect, where a social reality has set place, a psychological war is actually in effect, and we are losing that war to Google, which has become mom and dad. Then it's become the person's religious authority. We even have like Ayatollah Google now, because Google is the one that's downloading the information into our kids' minds. So as Imam Hussein alayhi salam is traveling, his son is traveling next to him. His son, as you all know, is Ali al-Akbar. He was young, he wasn't old. Some narrations say he was 18, some a little older. But let's take it around there. 18 years of age. And now what happens? At this level, as they're traveling, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is talking and conducting conversation with his son. So think of the youth that are here. You're raising kids, your mother, your father. What's your son's right on you? What's the right of the father? We should look at these things. Look into the Treaty of Rights. Risalat al-Huquq li-Imam Sajjad. Read that. Read it. It's incredible. That the Prophet was known when he would say, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. That connection is incredible. But now, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is talking to his son, and that conversation is happening. Now what happens? Ali al-Akbar asks, and he says, aren't we on the right path, O father? Remember the road? Between us, from here to the gate, is a road. Are you on the right road? Are we on the right road as a community? Do we have unity or disunity? And why did they rise? For us to stick together. So now he asks, aren't we on the right road? Aren't we traveling the right path? Imam Hussein responds, and he says, but of course. Imam Hussein did not rise for any fame, glory, wealth. He could have had all that. He denied that. And that's why he took the position of remembrance throughout the history of time. It will never stop. Zainab stamped that as well. Zainab also stamped history. And she signed history by that quote. She says, Wallahi la tamha dhikruna. You will never what? Erase our remembrance. So on that level, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So now, as the father is talking to the son, and they're moving towards their final destination, as a father, what do you have to do to keep your son on the right road, your daughter on the right road? The obligation in Risalat al-Huquq, it says you have to guide him towards his Lord. You have to guide him towards that gate. You have to, it's your job, it's your responsibility. And he will be inscribed unto you with his good or bad, with her good or bad. To the fathers, your daughter's hijab and your wife's hijab is on you. Understand that. That's your responsibility. Think about that. Allah has set these things into place for a reason. That we are obligated towards each other. In rights and wrongs, we're obligated towards each other. Sisters, you just have to make sure your husband is happy and you're free to go. That's all you have to do. From there, just take care of them. They're like little babies. It's okay. So on that level, once you begin to understand that now you're traveling the road and the world's going to come at you. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. How do we raise kids like Ali? Look, the Prophet begins and he tells us. He says, لَعَبْهُ سَبْعًا. Play with him, be a playmate for 7 years. Everyone knows this hadith. Second level, he says from 7 years old to 7, be a playmate. Then he says, أَدِّبْهُ سَبْعًا. This is important. Discipline from 7 to 14. Teach them discipline. Be a disciplinarian. Don't yell, don't scream. Set limits. Remember we said nafs al-ammara, the self that is controlled by what? The desires. When you look at a 1-year-old and they're putting a ball in their mouth, you think it's cute. When you see a 70-year-old doing that, you think they're crazy. So you have to evolve. You have to graduate through these stages that Allah has set. So now, then on the last level, it says then befriend him for 7 years. 7, 7, 7. This is what you are to your son or daughter. Let's go to Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says, same thing, watch. Now this is what your son or daughter is to you. What you are to them, the Prophet gives. What they are to you, Imam Ali alayhi salam gives. Watch the gate. Go to the city. Then go straight to Allah. This is how we should raise our sons and daughters. This is the responsibility that you own. That you are responsible for that kid. And know, for my youth, and the people that are here, that anything, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he says, anything you see good in yourself, know that it's from your father. Think of Ali al-Akbar to his father. Where is he getting his genetic code from? That's not light. So now, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says to you, the first 7 years, he says, your comfort is in him or her for 7 years. You know how your kids are, mashallah, when you see a little kid, they're very comfortable in the beginning. They're what? They're laughing, joking. It's the best time of your life when you spend it with them. And I'm glad there's a lot of youth here for tonight. Then he says, Then he says on this level, his obedience is also 7. It should be 7. From 7 to 14, his obedience to you should be at that level. Today, I'm sorry, our kids control us. I want to go, I want to do this, I want to leave, it's about me, I don't care. They're growing up in a self-centered society. Self-centeredness is individuality. Individuality is the center of it, is egocentric thinking. It's about me. You see what's happening in the world now, subjectivism. It's a new religion. Subjectivism is all about who? What my perception is. And if I think I'm right and you're wrong, you don't matter. Nobody else's thinking matters. What I feel, I want to do. This is what's happening now. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Do you see the person who's made his Lord his own desires? This is the time we're in now. Whatever I feel I want to do, I will do. No one can stop me. There is no amr ma'ruf wa nahi an munkar. You can't say anything to anyone anymore. You can't. To enjoin good and forbid evil, try to say something to someone now. Try to stand and take a position. And what happens to your son or daughter? When you say, it's like, you can't do that. Watch what happens. They want absolute freedom. It's literally a war with freedom. You can't tell me what to think, what to do. I'm sorry, from 7 to 14, that's your job. This is something we have to what? Understand. This is the Imam talking, not me. I have nothing to do with this. I can give you some psychology, and I'm going to give you that right now. Okay? Forget psychology. Doesn't matter. Your Imam is the center of everything. Then he says on the third level, listen to this please. He says the third level, Rasulullah said what? He says, and befriend him. Imam Ali gives us something even more beautiful in terms of understanding because it has a little more depth. The Prophet gives us a little more general. Imam Ali completes the whole equation. Please listen to this. Then on that level, he says, he said, thumma. He's either your friend or your foe. He's either your friend or your enemy. That's what's going to happen. From 14 to 21, that's what's going to turn. You choose. At the end, it's on you. Because he's going to turn. That development is going to happen. The brain is going to shift. He's going to come into his own identity. 14 to 21, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Identity formation takes place in the brain. They start moving towards adolescence. And that adolescence, they start seeking peers. They're not interested in you anymore. At that moment, all you can do is what? Don't do that. Don't do that. There's a system that you have to follow to make sure that you end up with the right, what? Kids. And then they grow into adolescence, and then become emerging adults. Then they actually become adults. It takes the brain 25 years to develop. 25 years. So let's go into these stages. So he's either going to become your friend or he's going to become your enemy. Think of Ali al-Akbar. Think of his submission, that he seeks permission. Why did they seek permission to go out to battle? Why? Because they're seeking the permission of who? Their Imam. They won't even move without his permission. Think about that. So he has to open the gate for them to actually achieve martyrdom. They seek permission. Do kids seek permission now? Do they do that? You're seeking their permission. I'm sorry, that's not the way it works. So on that level, let's go into the first 7 years. What happens in the brain in the first 7 years? My brother, how old are you?
10.
10. How old are you, brother?
11.
11?
8.
8? Yes, you.
No, I'm 8.
11? You're 9?
No, I'm 8.
You're 8? MashaAllah. How about you, brother?
I'm 11.
11? Okay, how about the little guy right there?
5.
You're 5? MashaAllah. What's your name, Habibi? What is it? Saif. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I'm scared of you. Alright, go ahead. What is it?
5.
You're 5 too? Okay, so Saif is 5 years old. What happens between what? The beginning of age till 7 years of age. So by the age of 7, please pay attention to this. By the age of 7, the brain has developed to about 90% of its size. So the kid, we call them kids, but his brain is literally at that mass. Don't think that they don't understand. You're being fooled. But we have to what? Be a playmate for 7 years of age. You have to play with them. Why? Because there's an exploratory part of the brain. Please listen to this if you're a parent. Please. The exploratory part of the brain is all about what? Touching, feeling, understanding the world. They're exploring. The Prophet hit this perfectly. We didn't need science. He's already setting this stuff up. So on that level, when they touch and feel, what do we do? What do we do as parents? Stop. We're starting in the wrong stage. I'm not telling you not to put parameters. Just know what you're doing. Now watch what happens. If the kid is exploring, please pay attention. If the kid's exploring and they're touching, feeling, what happens every time you stop them while they're exploring their environment? What's going to happen? They're going to associate everything new with fear. And what do you think they're going to do to you later? You're teaching them how to lie because they want to escape repercussions. One thing I tell my clients all the time when they're raising kids or doing whatever they're doing: promote honesty. How do you promote honesty? You tell them, if you lie, I'm going to punish you. If you tell me the truth, I'm not going to punish you. Don't promote the fear. When you punish without explanation, they're going to begin to associate anything new with what? With fear. They're going to hesitate. So what do you think is going to happen when they go into the world? What do you think is going to happen? Don't underestimate what the brain is doing. So now, the next thing, it goes through a stage, okay, where it's literally setting up itself. The brain is setting up itself. It goes through something called synaptogenesis. Synaptogenesis is an understanding of the building of the network and neurons in the brain. The neural connections are coming together and they're fastening each other. The experience is taking over. And the pathways, the neural pathways, are being refined more and more and more. So now what happens here? Please, just understand this. What happens to the way we wire? I'm going to go into this a little bit. Please, I'm not going to go too far into the science, but I'm just going to go into, this is the way we learn. I'm just going to give a little bit here and I'm going to step away. I don't have time. So now, the way you learn, please pay attention and try to get this. Try to get this, even if you're youth. Try to get it. So now watch what happens. When you are in this stage, two neurons that come together. There's something called a synaptic cliff in the middle. Okay? This releases neurotransmitters to this one. It's a chemical what? Release based on an electrical signal. Now what happens? When you learn something for the first time, over and over and over, and imagine this is a bad habit. Watch what's going to happen. Habits start in the front of the brain, from the right side. They move to the back of the brain, and then they move over, and they use less and less and less tissue. And now, when that happens, you know what happens to you? Do you think that habit now is underneath your control? That habit is no longer underneath your control. It's based on impulses from the inside, stimulus from the outside, It's no longer underneath your control. Now, from here, let's say it's a diseased habit. That habit is a suggestion. That's all it is. It's a suggestion. هو الذي, in terms of that, الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس. He whispers in the hearts of what? You don't even need shaitan now. You know what's going to happen? Your own habits are whispering to you. And especially if it's a diseased habit. Here's the way it works. So if you learn something and it becomes a habit, you wire yourself. And that wiring is never going to leave you. It never goes away. Once you wire yourself in terms of a habit, it never goes away. It's yours. Congratulations. If it's a good one, good for you. If it's a bad one, Allah Sa'adak, we'll pray for you. Okay? On that level, this is the way it wires. The more you fire this neural pathway, here's what happens. It starts, this side will release more neurotransmitters. It takes less millivolts to fire that what? That neural pathway. So less voltage, more neurotransmitters, and more receptors on the other side. So now, what did you just do to yourself? And if it's a bad habit and it's a diseased habit, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed and you need to cope, that diseased habit is going to do what? It's going to give you a suggestion. Come release the dopamine. Come cope this way. So now, the last level, from 0 to 7, is this. You have something called synaptic pruning. Synaptic pruning is when literally the brain is cutting off certain neural connections. It's becoming more refined and it's creating like highways. It's literally creating highways in the brain. This is all happening from 0 to 7. So now the pathways are being created and the kid is being refined further and further and further. What happens from 7 to 14? Myelination, I talked about it a few days ago. This stage, myelination, is something on what? On every cell on the axon, there's something called, it's like a fatty sheath that goes over the neuron. This speeds up what? What do you think it speeds up? The connections. So now the brain is being wired for cognitive processing. From 7 to what? 14. What does the Prophet say to do here? What does Imam Ali say to do here? Be a disciplinary partner to them. Don't just let them go. Don't just let them do what they want. No. Don't miss that crucial period in their life. Don't miss it. Why? Because cognitive processing is taken over. They have to know that there's limits to things. There's limits to the world. They can't just stay in the first stage and think it's okay. That I can just run the world. It's my world. And you're living in it. It doesn't work that way. It's your responsibility. That's what happens in the second stage. So the neural pathways are building highways. It's like a city that's being built in the mind. Third level. From 14 to 21. He's either going to become your friend or your enemy. She's either going to become your friend or she's either going to become what? Your enemy. Why? Why do you think this happens, especially at this age? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So now from 7 to 14. If you guys can please just keep it down a little bit. It's a distraction when people are talking. So please, if you can. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now on this level, here's what happens. From 14 to 21, there's a process that your brain goes through. And this process now, it's all about reward, sensitivity, and sensation. sensation seeking, and a requirement and feedback from the external world. Those teenage years are so hindered on what? Social feedback. They want to fit in. They want a sense of belonging. So now what happens here? It's very important that the Prophet says, be their friend. Guide them. Walk with them on the road. Imam Ali is walking with whom? Ali al-Akbar. And he's what? He asks him. He's asking what? Are we on the right path? Look at the guidance. He says, of course. But look at the weight of the situation. He knows where they're going towards. Do you think that's easy for the heart to submit at that level, at that age? Look at the prophets in the Quran. Prophet Nuh. What happened to his son? Was his son obedient or not? That Prophet Nuh actually calls out to Allah. He says, Allah responds, he's not from you. Look at Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail. The submission to the will of Allah. So the first thing we need to teach in these levels is what? For our kids to become God conscious. How do they become God conscious? By bringing them to the masjid. And when they come to the masjid, explain the gate. And when we explain the gate and the system is working, they see the city. Then they get to Allah Azza wa Jal the proper way. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
So now, I'm going to go through this really quickly. Please just bear with me. What happens if our kids get off the road and they're doing the wrong things and we can't control them? Is there any mechanisms that we can use? Is there something that our ulama give us? Now the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam gave us a beautiful setup. What can we do if we are walking on this road and we find ourselves in the wrong path? And what happens to us on an inside level? I'm going to take you through 5 steps. This is what our ulama teach. Psychology, no problem. Religion, here's the root. This is where you need to get to. Find out what your religion says. Psychology without religion, I'm sorry. It's an empty ground. There's no substance you can stand on. Stand on your religion. Stand on where you can really find your identity. Because from 14 to 21, identity formation comes into place. What does that mean? Value systems come into place. They start seeing what is real, what is not. What to value, what not to value. The character is being fortified. It's coming into place. So from 14 to 21, you better be there as a father, and you better be there as a mother. It's extremely important to understand that. So now, what can we do if you find yourself being young or being a little older? Any one of us can use this process. What we can do, the first stage, is al-muraqab. This is what our ulama tell us. Al-muraqaba is what? It's to look at the situation, look at your conditions, and to constantly be watching the self. Constantly be watching yourself. And when you're watching yourself, it's like a third eye. You're looking from the outside. And that awareness, this is in psychology, some of this is called awareness training. You're training yourself to become more aware. So when you do that, and you have this stage of muraqab, you're watching yourself. Did I do this right? Did I do this wrong? What happened in this day? Did I take account of this or not? Now you have what? You have an eye towards yourself. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is when you go from there. Now you have it. You're looking at your day, and then what? Al-muhasaba. Stage 2 is al-muhasaba, where you start taking account of yourself. حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. account for yourself before you get accounted for. It's going to happen. I'll ask you this question. Can you live in this world where your own intention is scrolling on your forehead? Think about that question. Imagine Allah put your own intention and it's stamped on your forehead every time you speak. How scary would the world be? But that's having one face. You can't lie anymore because you're exposed. You know when that's going to happen? When you're standing in front of Allah. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. Everything will be brought out. There's nothing that you can hide. In this world, there's nothing you can hide. Nothing. Because it's going to be taken out and it's going to be shown. Right now, as we're actually living this moment, on the day of judgment, we're going to relive it. You're going to see my intention. You're going to see what is in my heart. You're going to see it. And I'm going to see what's in your heart. Only the people who are what? Allah protects them. That they're not exposed. Your exposure is not here, but it's coming. Trust me, it's coming. That's why, don't lie. Don't cheat. Take account of yourself. If you make a mistake, apologize. Know your mistakes. Don't try to fool people. Don't do that. You're fooling yourself. Account for yourself. And now, let's say you have the account. You're watching yourself. You've accounted yourself and you're writing all this stuff down. Let's say you're writing everything down. And now you have a list of all the things that you did that are wrong. Then what do you do after that? The third step is al-mu'ataba. Al-mu'ataba is this. It's the person who feels remorse. They feel guilt for their sin, their act. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He says, when a disbeliever commits a sin, it's like a fly that's on their nose. And they just push it away. But when a believer, it says a disbeliever meaning a munafiq, a hypocrite. When a believer commits a sin, look at the difference in emotional structure, emotional conditioning. Look at the heart. When a believer commits a sin, it's like a mountain on their shoulders. That's how they feel. Think about that. Where are you at? Weigh yourself on that level. When you commit something wrong, do you go apologize to the person? That if you want to read a hadith for apology and actually giving everything it's right, go Nashr Balagha 417. Read it if you dare. Imam Ali gives 6 steps. It's scary what you have to do. Be preventative. Don't try to what? Don't commit the sin, then do something else. There's a difference. The third stage is a what? Al-mu'ataba. It's to feel that weight. That Imam Ali in Nashr al-Balagha, he says, Ataytuka ya Rabbi. Ataytuka ya Allah, I've come to you. This is why the ad'iyah are so important. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is why the ad'iyah are so important. He says, I've come to you, Ya Allah. I'm broken, repentant. I've come to you in this stage. I'm weak. I'm not able. I need help. You're being what? Submissive. You're suspending the ego. That's what you're doing. That remorse is important. And you're saying, I need help because I made a mistake. Imagine you rationalize your mistakes and you don't apologize. Are you saying you need help? No. You're moving towards arrogance. You're moving towards denial of what someone's right is over you. Now, on that level, the fourth step. Let's say now you've watched yourself. You've taken account, and now you feel bad about your sin. What do you need to do? And now you've apologized to the person. You feel bad, you've apologized, you've done everything you need to do. What do you do after that? The fourth step is al-muharaba. Al-Muharaba is when you go against what? The self. This is where you fight the self. What have we been saying all this time? Tell the self what? What should you tell the self? And? Oh. It's that no. That no, and I told you some of the nights, I said what? Get to 50 no's. Try to get to 50 no's a day if you can. If you're speaking now and you're interrupting me, let's say, okay? Just tell yourself no, just for a second. Please. Okay? Just for a second. You can start right now. So now when that happens, when you begin to tell yourself no, this is what happens. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. Let me move before that. Listen to this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And it says in the Quran prior to this, he says, وَآثَرَ حَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى. And surely the person is transgressed. وَآثَرَ حَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. And he seeks this world. فَإِنَّ الْجَحِيمَ هُوَ الْمَأْوَى. Surely, the hellfire is his abode. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. And whoever fears the position of his Lord, he's thinking of Allah. When you're about to commit a sin and you know you're going to do it, and especially if it's amdan. Amdan meaning, I know I'm about to commit the sin and I'm actually moving towards it. Are you moving towards the gate? Are you moving away from the gate? Willingly, the heart is being conditioned that you put a black dot on your heart. And you think you are going to be able to see what you need to see when the time comes. If you commit a bigger sin, a major sin, in the Quran it says, وَتُوبُوا إِلَى اللَّهِ تَوْبَةً نَصُوحًا. Do not go towards the bigger sins, the major sins. Why? Because Allah promises on those sins, hellfire. That's the only way they can be removed. That's the only way you can be purified. Tubu ila Allah tawbatan nasuha. So on that level, which gate do you want to choose? Watch tonight. So on that level, you begin now to see. Ali al-Akbar asks from the gate, because he's going to come back to the gate. He asks his permission. He says, imagine saying to your own father, can I leave? Can I go into battle? Imagine this is your son. Imagine you're a mother and he's your son. How difficult is that? That's not an easy thing to do. So Ali al-Akbar gets on his horse. Imam Hussein is looking at it. Think about that. Think about your son is going out into harm's way. You know that everyone, and so many people are already what? Ali was actually one of the first martyrs. But people are what? Think of the situation. Think of the condition of the situation. And now he gets on his horse. Imam Hussein is looking at it. And he was known to be what? Ali al-Akbar was known to be what? Extremely, he was known to be handsome. But he looked like who? Khalqan wa shabhan. Meaning, shabhan wa khalqan. From who? From the Prophet. He is a flag. He is a flag. His face, his nature is a flag. To who? To who? The other side. He's a flag. He looked like the Prophet. His mannerism was like the Prophet. This is the son you want. This is the son you want. You want that mannerism to be like that. That there's a hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam, and I go into this just for a second. A lot of us say, okay, raise your kids what? In their time, right? We say, raise your kids in their time. What does that mean? Adabakum. In the hadith it says adabakum. Okay, you know what that means? In their social norms. Not their adab in terms of their values, morals, their mannerism. You have to teach them these things. That's still on you. Just raise them in their own social norms. So now, he gets on his horse, and he asks permission. And now, Imam Hussein alayhi salam is looking at his son walk towards the battle. To me, I think about that. I say, SubhanAllah, what is the heart going through? Imagine every step the horse takes towards the battlefield is becoming more distant from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imagine the heart and the emotional distance, how it's getting wider, but it's like a rope that's tied to the heart. And it's pushing it out of the heart. Think about that. And now what? Ali al-Akbar gets into battle. But they weren't normal. And back then they had to face each other. People will step up because they're warriors. People have to step up to you. So you're looking at a person face to face. You're looking at death face to face. You think that takes just a weak person, a weak heart? Your heart has to be solid. It has to be on the road 100%. It can't be diverting this way or that way. Your heart has to be intact. And when your heart is intact, you face death willingly. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter. The Imam Ali, the first person, steps up. When they step up, Ali al-Akbar. When he steps up, Ali takes him down. Takes another person down. They were warriors. They weren't just jurists. They were warriors where? Where were the warriors first? You think it was in the battlefield? They weren't warriors in the battlefield. They were warriors in their sujood. Be a warrior in your sujood. That's where you need to be a warrior. That's where your heart should submit to Allah. Because when you submit, you rise. And when you rise and you see that sparkle in your heart, it's incredible what happens. It's incredible what you own in terms of emotions. So now he takes them down. Ali al-Akbar comes back to the camp. They couldn't kill him. He sees Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And now he's talking to him. It says it's heavy, the armor is heavy. And the weight of the situation is heavy. And he said, I have no water. I'm thirsty. Look at what happens to the body when it's actually dehydrated. Do some research on your own. And now what happens? He goes back out into battle. There's someone called Hakam. Comes out to who? To who? Face Ali al-Akbar. And now Imam Hussein, the fear hits the heart. Because this person is known. They're known that they're not.
Ali, son of Hussein, son.
So on that level, what happens? So on that level, what happens? The person begins, he's looking at it. Ali al-Akbar steps up, takes him down, comes back. Layla was in a tent. She saw before he was coming back, she saw Imam Hussein. She says, why do you look like that? Why do you look like that? What's wrong? He said, someone stepped up to him. I'm afraid. He's afraid. He's a father. He's afraid for his son. He says, Ya Layla, ad'i. She goes back into her tent and she begins to pray. He says, we heard from Rasulullah that the dua of a mother is accepted. Please, the mother is a very special person. وَحَمَلْتُهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنْ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. Ali was going back to Allah. So now he goes back out into battle and he gets struck the first time, second. But what happens? Blood is coming over his eyes and his horse takes him where? Takes him into the wrong camp. Please, take this with you and I'll end with this. When Hur went to Imam Hussein's camp, what did Imam Hussein offer? Hur got on his knees and he begged Imam Hussein, will I still be forgiven? Imam Hussein said, of course, you'll be forgiven. He showed him mercy, respect, dignity. What happens when Ali al-Akbar goes into the other camp? What happens when the other door is open? Look at the world. Look at the door you choose every single day. Look at it. When you're doing business transactions, when you're raising your kids, when you're working on yourself. Look at what happened to Ali al-Akbar, that when he went to the other camp. Imam Hussein was the gate of mercy. Hold on to the road. Hold on to it. Don't let it go. No matter what is happening in your life, hold on to it. Hold on to it. And win the war on the inside. Win this. The shaitan is after this, but Allah is also after this. You choose. You want that gate or you want that gate? It's up to you. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.